In this video we demonstrate how a storage volume is attached to a virtual machine running in cPouta. Here we continue from the situation that was reached in the previous videos where we launched a virtual machine running in cPouta and then opened an SSH connection to this virtual machine. As a first step, we will create a new volume to the cPouta environment. In the Pouta CSCFI web interface, we first move to the volumes section of the interface. The volume listing shows that we don't have any volumes yet available there, so we create a new one by pressing Create Volume button. We name the volume as Data for Contest and write a short description about what is this volume about. And then we define the size of the volume that we are going to create. So we can type it here as numbers, and in the right side you can see how much storage capacity our project is having in total and how much of this capacity is used by the volume that we are going to create. So now the volume listing shows us that we have one volume there available. The size of the volume is 500 gigabytes. You can think these volumes that can be created in cPouta as a kind of virtual USB sticks or external hard drives that you can attach to a virtual machine. Now the volume is not attached to any virtual machine, and also in the future the volume can be attached only in a one virtual machine at a time. Next we attach the volume we just created to the virtual machine we have running in cPouta. We go back to the instances view, and there in the virtual machine list select the drop-down menu of the virtual machine and there choose Attach Volume. We choose the volume that we want to attach to the virtual machine and then execute the process. And now the volume is attached to our virtual machine. However, to use it, we still need to mount and initialize it. This is done inside the virtual machine. Instructions for doing these steps can be found from the Persistent Volumes section of the cPouta user guide. We already have an existing SSH connection to our virtual machine. As a first step, we list the volumes attached to our virtual machine with command sudo partit-l. From the output we can now see that the volume is linked to location /dev/vdb. As this volume has not been used before, we first have to create a disk partition and file system to the volume. First we run the partit command to create the partition. You should notice that in the example the location of the volume was different, so we have to change it here from the command and run the command, and also the second one. And after partitioning we then create a file system to the volume. The file system is created with mkfs command, and then finally we add a label to the partition we have created. Creating partitions and a file system to a volume removes all the old data from the volume, so normally these steps are done only when the volume is used for the first time. Now the volume is ready to be mounted to our virtual machine. We first create a mount point for the volume, go to directory/media, and there create an empty directory called volume. And finally we use the mount command to mount the volume in VDB1 to the mount point we just created. And now we have new directory here, volume, and if we run command df, that shows how much disk space we have here now nearly this 500 gigabytes. That is the size of the volume that we attached. This mounted volume directory is currently owned by the root account of the virtual machine, so the cloud user account cannot directly create their subdirectories or put their files, but if we use sudo command to make a extra directory called test data to this directory and then change the ownership of this directory from root to cloud user, we now have a space where the cloud user, the normal user account, can create, copy and analyze files. Next we copy some data from Taito cluster to this virtual machine and the volume that we have created there. We open a new Taito session from the No Machine desktop. Log in there with the password. And then move to the folder where we have the data that we want to copy. As we have defined that we use a security group which allows SSH connections from Taito to our virtual machine, we can use scp command to copy files from Taito to the virtual machine. The authentication is based on the key file, so in the scp command we should use -e option to define the key file that we are going to use to authenticate to the server. scp command also needs the IP address of the virtual machine, and we can check that from the instances view in the cPouta interface. After the IP address, we add then double point and the path where we want to copy the data to in the remote server. So we can copy it from the virtual machine session, and now we have the command ready and we can start the file transfer. The password that scp asks is the password that is defined for the key file we are using. The file has now been transported, and with ls command we can see that there's a new file in the test data directory there in the virtual machine. I will copy also a second file to the virtual machine. I copy the file name from a KIME batch job that I've been using in Taito, add there in the scp command and copy the file to the virtual machine, and now we have two files there in the test data directory of the virtual machine. In the previous steps of this tutorial we have already installed KIME to the virtual machine, so I can now try to run the same command that I used in Taito as a batch job as an interactive job there in the virtual machine. I open the batch job file, copy there the KIME command and modify it a little bit according to the file path so that I can launch the job, and now I have the KIME task running there in the virtual machine. The task is running, but I will halt it and use pg command to send it to background and check with ls command that KIME has created an output directory. I can log out from the virtual machine and the job keeps running on there. If I now connect to the virtual machine again and check the status of the jobs with top command, I can see that the uclust process that is launched by the KIME command I used is still running there.